Bitcoin has broken to new lows as we predicted in yesterday's video, and in today's video we're going to be looking for clues across the chart of whether or not this move is just getting started or whether the bottom is in and we are ready to start seeing a reversal. We'll be looking across the higher time frames and working our way down to what is most likely to occur in the next 24 hours. Welcome to Bitcoin Escape Plan. If you enjoy the analysis, then leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and if you want a personal reminder of the levels that matter most every day in your email, then go subscribe at bitcoinescapeplan.com. Let's get into the video. So this is what I was talking about yesterday. This is the bottom band of the downtrend anchored VWAP, or actually that's the elder VWAP. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go over to here to courses. I explain that in more detail. I will be going over that more towards the end of the video, but again, just so you have the context of why that's so important. This is not something that we interact with very often. It's fairly uncommon that we interact with this. So important, that's how we knew to pay attention to that level. Now we just have to react to it moving forward. Let's go get our daily close. Yesterday's daily close was at 59.7K. As you can see, we are on an overwhelmingly down trend on the daily time frame. We recently had a rejection off of the daily SMA. That's part of what has caused such a significant drop. Was we fought for a whole month, guys, from May 15th to June 15th to get over to the daily SMA, chopped it for a bit, but for the most part have just continued to fail downward. Now I have gone ahead and drawn a couple of important new horizontal lines for you, which we'll go over on the monthly time frame. So on the monthly time frame, the reason I have these drawn is primarily because of these guys over here. These are the monthly closing candles for the tops in 2021, both the first peak and the second peak. And then this yellow one is actually over here in April and May of 2024. When I was originally drawing the lines, I did look at 2024 and it tried to keep it in context of what occurred in 2021. For example, these guys obviously are still very important candles, but how I'm actually interpreting that is that was strength off of the 2021 levels, just as this was weakness off of the 2021 levels. And those do, supersede the other levels. They are more important. So like this one here, this formed a Fibonacci pivot because it was deemed as important. These guys did not form Fibonacci pivots. This one is over here, randomly 59.5, but we're not really as focused on that one. I like the monthly closes for that. That's what I'm looking for at the moment. So that kind of establishes the range that we're looking for, how the price behaves down here. Where again, what we're looking for, psychologically speaking, is confirmation of whether we have support or rejection, essentially, at this level. Support or resistance. I don't know why my brain was farting on that word. So that's why we've been stuck in this region. That's why we've been testing this region. And really, if I think about it from a psychological basis, what the market makers want right now is they want everyone in 2024 who is newer to this. These are people who had heard about Bitcoin already, but this is their first cycle perhaps actually getting started. This is the ETF buyers. This is people who have money in a 401k or in IBIT or MSTR instead of actually having it in Bitcoin. So they're kind of more hands-off. Whereas these people over here were super late to the party in 2021, but have hopefully by this time remained in the market. So obviously the people who bought at the top and then got shaken out, they're not in Bitcoin anymore. They're never going to think about it again. But the people who bought there went through this entire market cycle and are now on their second market cycle of learning how Bitcoin behaves. Those people will have stronger conviction here. So again, they will interpret weakness here more basically it holds more weight than it would have earlier if we were to see this drop. So what we're looking for now is a couple of different clues on the monthly time frame that indicate for us the relative strength of where we are in the cycle and just how similar it is to past cycles. So before we get into that, it is important to remember that we typically have between 3 and 4 green candles in a bear market year. We have already printed 2 green candles, which means we most likely have 1 to 2 more green candles left in the year. That has to be our baseline assumption. That is pretty uniform across bear market years, that it's either 3 or 4. Now, me personally, I believe the next most likely green candle is July, just because of how large the body of this candle is. You know, this is a 10%, this is a 14%. We're currently sitting on an 18.5% negative candle at the moment. So it's not going to be that difficult for July to print a quote unquote bullish candle on that. Literally, if we close the month at 59.9K, then all July would have to do is close above 60K in order to be considered bullish, quote unquote, or at least to print a green candle, which again, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for when are those most likely to occur, because otherwise we would expect consolidation and chop, and dropping essentially in a bear market year. That's what we have to assume is going to occur. So if we look at the points of evidence on the chart now, that'll help us understand what happened in the past as well as just repeating itself. So first and foremost, we have the point of control right here. This is the point on the chart where the most human beings pressed buy or sell with the largest amount of volume. So that's 67.5K. We did have a rejection of that I went over in like 2 weeks ago when it occurred on the chart. We were talking about that level. People were able to take shorts off of that level, myself included. Very, very important level for us to pay attention to. We also have the bottom band of the downtrend anchored VWAP. That's the anchored VWAP that's drawn from the 126 all-time high over here in October. Basically gives us a picture of the pressure of the price to the downside. Obviously, very, very important. We have to keep in context as well. We failed off of 83K over here. This is the middle band of the downtrend anchor VWAP, and that's how I was able to predict that we were going to hit 83K and start to have rejection. I predicted that all the way in February. It happened May 5th, May 6th. So I was very happy about that. I know a lot of the subscribers are happy about that. Leave a like if you are happy about that prediction being correct months in advance. So I know that I am. So those are our two most important recent signals, other than, again, we were rejected off of 76.3K just before this month. So that was in May when we actually lost it, but still important psychologically. We have a lot of signs for bearishness, as well as being below the 64K pivot, which puts us in a different range now than we have been stuck in all the way since January. Since January, we've been stuck between about 64K and 76.3K, with minor times where we are above or below it. We have now firmly established ourselves below it, and we're just basically waiting, you know, for anyone who's asking themselves how low can Bitcoin go or how low is it going to go. Anyone on the channel already knows, I think it's not going to go any lower than about 53.5K, roughly 54K right now is the lowest that I can believe in the month of June. And I honestly don't really care if that's actually the first or second week of July. If we just happen to be a bit extended, it doesn't matter to me. Like, the shape of the chart is what matters to me, and that's what it tells me, is that it should form support by no lower than there. And we may have already seen evidence, and we'll go over this later on in the video, we may have already seen evidence of support at 57, which everybody knows from yesterday's video. That's what I was talking about, is 57 and 59K are super, super important for us. Largely, again, just because of the bodies of the closing candles in 2021 and those bodies of the candles in 2024. Now, there are important levels in 2024 besides this, but they're mostly confirmed by Fibonacci pivots or the point of control, so I don't really care about those quite as much. These ones are more important for us locally speaking, but these are very important for us to just kind of establish, okay, is this range that was previously psychologically important, do we show strength or weakness at that level? So part of what allows us to build momentum into this theoretical, you know, July lower high that I keep talking about, which everyone will tell you that it's the Clarity Act. Everyone will tell you that it's whatever Kevin Warsh says on television or something like that. I don't really care. I care about what the chart tells me. What the chart tells me is that we already broke that 59, what is this exact level? 58.8. We broke down to a low of 58K, which obviously is a sign of weakness. However, the body of the candle, now granted, this is a monthly candle, so let's actually snap down to the weekly candle. Guys, please leave comments down below if you have opinions about some of the other news stories and things popping up, or just like other things. Like, I don't really care about the fear and greed index, but if you've found it useful for your trading, talk to me about some of the other indicators that you use. I'm always happy to talk about those in the comments. So if we go based on the weekly time frame, largely the same points or clues. You know, we had the failure at the point of control that we called out, the failure at the bottom band of the downtrend anchored VWAP, the failure at 64K, largely the same. Just again, we get the context of already being below this at the start of the week. as opposed to having an interaction with all three of them last week. So that's really how we were able to anticipate. I was already out of my short. I had already closed my short on the strength here, and then saw weakness here, and then re-entered my short. Quite happy with that. I think I've had 230, 240% gains for the month. Not bad, guys. Not bad. Pretty stoked about that. Anyways, so what we're looking for now, again, is do we have a candle close for the week above these monthly levels? Now, again, they are monthly levels, so not quite as important as, what is that? That's our Tuesday close or something like that. We will really want to see, okay, can we get the price to come back up? If it can get above this yellow one, this is the 2024 one, then we'll kind of show that the psychological weight of the individuals in 2024 is more important than the 2021 ones. However, not quite important enough to get over the second double peak, but that's basically what we're going to be looking for the weekly candle as well as the monthly candle. Is we're going to get those stacked, essentially. Now, daily candles are always important. I don't really talk about them as much on this channel because you can do that yourself. You can see that pretty easily. I also, if you sign up at the website, I send you that every day in the email. I say what yesterday's close is, so that'll help you if you don't want to look for yourself. But functionally speaking, when we have like a stacking of higher time frame closes, it can sometimes make the price like really behave pretty negatively. That's what happened over here with 83K. We started to break down, and then by the time we had an interaction with both the 76.3K Fibonacci pivot and the weekly SMA again, it was already too late. We were already kind of destined to continue to drop once we had shown weakness at 76.3K, which is when I originally entered that short, actually, because I saw we were getting weakness and thought, okay, this is the time to enter this. Very happy that I did so. So again, what we're looking for now is where does this weekly candle close? Now, there's nothing really preventing it from being roughly where it is. Let's go look for evidence on the chart of past cycles. I think this is the longest I've gone in a video without talking about 2018. So I use 2018 as a basis for my analysis just because it's been overwhelmingly accurate so far. This is the last time that Trump was president. We have to use it as a basic heuristic of whether or not the price is going to continue to behave this way until it does otherwise. So here we have our lows form in June in the second to last week. So the third week of June is roughly when we get a low of 5,743. So again, that's why we've been talking about 57 as a likely point of support. Because it's essentially adding a zero to that point. And again, guys, very similar. Our drop in February is almost identical. You basically add $1,000 to the price. This is 5,893. Where did we drop then? We dropped to about 59.9K, 60.1K on this chart, whatever. Below 60K is the point. And then same thing, we retested it closer to March into April. We're able to see strength there. Had a failure off of the weekly SMA, which brought us down into the June lows, which then reversed into July highs. Now, again, I think what they're going to use as the excuse for this is they're making the Clarity Act seem like it's not going to get passed now, and they will eventually flip that. They will eventually make it seem like it was always going to get passed, and this is the most favorable deal ever, even though you, the customer, don't get FDIC insurance, and you don't get stablecoin yield. Don't you love it? Isn't that the best, guys? Anyways, so that's what will start to allow the price to recover, which I believe could take the entire month of July. Like, it doesn't have to be we start to snap up immediately in July. Even these, like we're still just barely, this would be the equivalent for us in the first week of July, that we would just barely be getting back to the 64K Fibonacci pivot, which is very important. But the actual highs in July aren't till the third or fourth week, and then we start to sell off in the fourth week, which is still largely what I would expect. So what I'm focused on right now is I should probably already be closing this short. The fact that I've got so much extra out of this short is really nice. And again, if we're using 2018 as the basis of our analysis, which we are, then we wouldn't actually expect a touch of 54K. So I know I talk about that a lot. I know people will quote that level back to me on threads and everywhere else. Like, oh, you said it was going to hit this, you said it was going to hit this. And I said, no, no, no. The lowest I believe it can hit is that. That does not mean that it will hit it. That is the lowest that I can believe that it'll hit. The same way that the lowest I can believe it will hit in 2026 in general is 34 to 39K, based on our relative strength and support at 32K and 35K back in 2022, or rather, sorry, 2023, which was my first semi-public call that I was correct about back in 2022. Very, very happy that that one turned out. And that's part of why I have a channel now, guys, is I started to be able to call out things like way ahead of them happening and was like, oh shit, maybe I should tell other people about it instead of just talking to myself and my one friend. Anyways, that's what we're really, really looking for now. Is I know a lot of people are talking about how, oh, it's down until the end of the year. And I don't think that's an accurate picture. Now, granted, I don't think that we see many lower high attempts. I think the July one is the primary one. Then we start to see weakness into August and really start to break down in September. But that's not to say that there won't still be trades that you can take to the upside. This is like, I don't understand why people are sleeping on this. I think it's just a lack of knowledge, to be honest, because I didn't even know about these contracts until I think like February and March is when I started to trade them, but they've been available since July of last year. Had I known that, guys, God, it would have been a very different year for me. But now that I do know them, that's all that I'm focused on, is trying to catch these swings for Bitcoin, because a lot of times you're going to be able to make more than 100% on your money just by catching a 10% move on Bitcoin, which is crazy, obviously. At the very end of this video, I have a video called Bitcoin Advanced Trading Course or something like that. Click on that. I explain it in detail. It's about an hour long. I talk to you about everything that you need for Nano BTC perpetuals contracts, maybe a couple other things that you need. Leave comments on that so I can make a better one for you guys. Anyways, that's what we're looking for across the higher timeframes. We already have our clues that we're going to continue to the downside. So what we're waiting for now is to start to see some clues of strength. We haven't seen them yet. The only one that we really have that I would say so far is, again, that we broke 258K, but we didn't close there. We closed at about 59.7, which is still below 60K, but we have been spending a little bit of time closer to 60K. This is a little bit more clear on the 15-minute chart. I'm not going to go to that, but 60.8K is pretty important, I believe. That's right about here, just below this guy over here. And again, that's the 2024 kind of like, stop in the drop level before it was able to chop a little higher. It did break down below it one more time before we were able to actually get the election results. And then obviously the price went up into the right after that point. But again, this is going to be pretty critical for the short term, like the next couple videos, basically, to decide whether or not we see another retest below 58K. If we can start to have acceptance above about 60.7, 60.8, then I would expect that the low is already in and that we are ready to start moving higher. And I really wouldn't want to start compounding my long much lower than about 61K. Certainly nothing wrong with it, because again, I think the highest that I can believe the price will go in this July rally is about 76.3K. Doesn't mean that we will. That's the highest that I can believe. However, it's probably more likely that it's going to be over here by the weekly SMA, which is currently at 70.4K, which anyone in the channel knows. The middle of this range between 76.3K and 64K is about 70.3K. So seeing a rejection there would not be strange if our overall thesis is that we need to be in this range, not this range. I talked about this a lot more in yesterday's video, but just as a reminder, the range that we have now entered is 64K to 44K, the midpoint of that being about 54K, which is, again, that's what I was talking about as I don't think we'll go lower than that. Why? Because we are stuck in the midpoint of both ranges and therefore have to kind of pinball between both until we have a sufficient amount of evidence that we do need to break 54K, which again, I don't think is going to happen until closer to September. Could be August, whatever, but probably closer to September, in my opinion. We'll see more chop around there. But functionally speaking, I think that we live in the middle of these two ranges now. So that's what we have to pay attention to moving forward. So at the moment, for the daily close, what we want to see, this is our first bullish, quote unquote, close in a little while. However, we're way below the daily SMA, and we can stay disconnected from the daily SMA for a long period of time. There's really nothing preventing, essentially based on what we just looked at on the chart as well in 2018, there's nothing really preventing us from not really getting above 61 to 64K for the first 2 weeks of July. Like, it may really just chop between 59K and about 63K for the next 2-3 weeks. You have to be prepared for that. That's again why I'm thinking it's probably going to be a good idea to flip positioning soon. I will be flipping to a long soon, unless we like really start to see significant weakness here. I am prepared to leave the short open basically for the rest of June. Doesn't have to be the rest of June. Like I said, if we start to see significant acceptance above here, I may be happy with closing that because I'm already pretty lucky. I've been able to squeeze out more than 200% out of this trade. So that's what I'm going to be looking for essentially before I start to build momentum to the upside instead. But that will be reflected again by that's still pretty weak on the daily time frame, guys. And this is all we have. Like these levels at 61.4 and 58.8. That's all that we really have structurally on the chart to form some strength here. This is an older Fibonacci pivot showing up at 60K. And again, like I said, a child with a crayon could tell you that 60K and 50K are important. Like it just is. However, we're not really in a strong bargaining position, basically, when the chart looks the way that it does. So I wouldn't say that a break below 58K is impossible here. We have already fulfilled the requirements in my eyes of what occurred in 2018 for June, where we had 2 breaks of the February lows. We've already seen that. We've had more than 2 breaks when looking at the daily time frame, but specifically on the weekly, we've had 2 breaks of it. So we've already fulfilled those requirements, and therefore the next thing that I'm looking for is whether or not we have confirmation of a lower high in July, which again is primarily going to be based off of, do we have strength above 59K? Do we have acceptance above 60.8K? And are we able to start seeing acceptance above 61.4 into, again, that will be confirmed at that time by strength of the daily SMA as well, which I would expect to be flipped for a little bit. On the weekly, typically it's very short-lived. This most recent instance where we're above on the weekly was the second longest time in a bear market of about 7 weeks. The longest being in 2014. We were above it for like 13 weeks. That's when they were deliberating about the making Bitcoin legally property in the United States. Obviously that went favorably. The price still sold off. So I'm still expecting that. That's still my base case moving into the Clarity Act, is that the price is going to sell off. So what's going to happen in the next 24 hours? So again, same levels for over here. The difference being the 4-hour SMA has dropped below the 61K Fibonacci pivot. Again, 61, 63, 60. These are all pretty important, especially at like these larger stratifications of numbers. It's not that hard to figure out which ones are important. Obviously, I have my specific ones that I talk a lot about on the channel, but some of these other ones on the shorter time frame, like if you're using these same things, by the way, this is the same as if you draw your own Fibonacci retracement, as if you're using I think it's called Pivot Standard or something like that in the indicators. And then I just set it to Fibonacci and I set it to auto. But that's super, super helpful. That's how I'm able to find key ranges like 64K to 76.3K that have made my analysis really, really accurate as of late. So again, we're kind of stuck between, we've established this Fibonacci pivot slightly above this point here on the chart, which again, that's the 2021 first peaks in April, May. And then again, we have had our interaction with the bottom band of the downtrend, or the elder VWAP. This is the one that's drawn from 2011. So it's super important that we just pay attention to the fact that the price wicked directly to it, but has reacted fairly strongly. The body of that candle closed significantly above, and it closed above that Fibonacci pivot. So basically, we had weakness enough to have a retest be mandatory. However, we showed strength because we closed the body of that candle both above the 2021 psychological level, as well as the most recent Fibonacci pivot that is printed. So objectively strength, which is why, again, we were allowed to head back in this direction. And you can see a rejection off of 60.7K, that same level in 2024, is what actually prompted the price to come back down. However, we are starting to form higher lows. So again, we could already have seen the bottom and therefore have to acknowledge that it may be time to reverse soon towards a long instead of a short. And I really think in general, just because of how much bearish pressure there is now, we are bound to see a reversal sooner than later. And I will be going over this in the last couple of videos of the month in more detail, because that's really what we're going to need to pay most attention to, is where is the monthly close actually occurring in relation to the weekly close, because again, the weekly close on Sunday will put a lot of pressure on wherever the monthly close is on whatever that is, Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday. So that'll be important. Those series of videos will be very important. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out. But in the next 24 hours, I would not be surprised if we see a interaction with the 4-hour SMA. It may be below this 60.7K level by the time we actually interact with it, depending on how much weakness the price has here and if it needs to head back towards 59K. But technically speaking, us breaking down to 58 is regarded as support at 57, which again, 57 is the more likely lowest that I could believe for here. 54 is just structurally speaking the lowest I can believe. But if we're going purely by evidence on the chart, then it actually is closer to 57 would be the actual bottom, and we may have already seen that. So you need to acknowledge that that is a possibility. The only thing that's going to prove otherwise is another interaction with that elder VWAP, which again is currently sitting at about 58K. So we do not have to touch it. Again, that's a pretty strong reaction to it, closing above these points. And you can even see the bodies of these candles as well are closing above that 59.1K. So again, we're forming support functionally at 59K at the moment, even though we are showing a little bit of weakness at about 61K. So that remains to be seen. We have very much been in this kind of cadence where the price will start to trend up and then I'll go to bed and then I'll wake up and it's way down again. So that has kind of been what we've been expecting. We may have done that enough now where we can mount some strength towards the 4-hour SMA. But again, we're way below the daily SMA at the moment. Let's see what the exact level is for that. That's at 63.2K. So until we get back in that direction, we really don't have any hope for mounting a serious reversal. And I wouldn't really be bothered by entering a long over there, but I think it's more likely that we should be paying attention to a long entry for here pretty soon. Again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, watch the video at the very end of this video, the Advanced Bitcoin Trading Course. I explain it in more detail. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below or just talk to me about other things that you think are important in crypto. Happy to talk about them. Anyways, thanks guys. I'll see you in tomorrow's video. Subscribe at bitcoinescapeland.com.